Hi quilters, my name is Cari and I'm going to be showing you how to do binding and it's very simple how to do an edge of binding that goes all the way around your quilt and you can't tell where you began or where you ended. I'm using just a sample so that we can do this quick and get it on YouTube. First thing you would do is cut enough 2-inch binding strips to go around the entire circumference of your quilt plus 20 inches, 15 to 20 inches. Then you're going to you need to join them together. We're going to use a bias joining. This stripe will go right side up on the horizontal plane. On the vertical plane, you will have one that goes right side down, so you've got right sides together. And offset them just enough so that you have a little corner here and a little corner here to see. And then you're going to stitch from that corner to that corner, always from upper left to lower right. So I'm going to put my needle in the down position. I'm using black thread. I put the needle right into that notch right there, and I'm lining up the lower notch on a center line I have written on some blue tape. And I think blue tape is the greatest invention. As is a thread cutter. Now I've stitched from that corner to this corner. I'm going to cut this off roughly 1/4 inch seam allowance, cut off the dog ears. Now you would press that seam open, but you can see that what we've created here is a strip that goes straight across. And then you're going to stitch this, press this in half so that you've got a folded edge here and a raw edge. The raw edges are meeting down here. What this accomplishes is it gives you less bulk in the seam. If you had two seams that were put together like this, and you folded it over, you would have multiple, I think it's 8 or 16 layers of fabric would be there to be a big knot. But instead, you've got it dispersed over a space, and so it's on a bias line. So it's just much better. So now you will take that, you'll fold that in half. The next thing you're going to do is cut a 45-degree angle at the starting side. So right side up. You're going to have your piece of binding, your long one. It goes all the way around the world practically. Take a ruler with a 45-degree angle on it, and on the lower edge of your binding strip, align that 45-degree line, and then snip off or just rotary cut off an angle so you have the 45. Now this is going to be your starting edge. And if you're doing this on a full-size quilt, any size quilt, just not a tiny little 1-foot square one like this, you would leave about an 8-inch tail. I'm only going to leave a short tail because I'm doing a short quilt, and it'll be much faster for you all. And I'm going to leave this tail hanging down here and just stitch down a little bit. Now here's how you get perfect mitered corners. I normally would have been stitching down a whole bunch with a quilt, but of course I don't have a whole bunch of quilt to stitch on. But I'm going to, when I approach the end of this side, the current side I'm stitching on, I take my ruler and I line the 1/4-inch line up with the bottom edge of that quilt. And then I'm going to mark a line on my binding strip. Don't have to do a dot at a 1/4 inch because I already know where the 1/4 inch part is on my seam allowance. I just need to know where to stop. So then I'm going to bring this stitch down here. I'm going to stop and back stitch 2. And this is how you get good miters. Once you get the quilt out of the machine, you're going to orient it to get ready to stitch down this side. You're going to flip your binding strip up, easy for me to say, to create a 45-degree line. And how you do that is if it goes straight up like it was just an extension of this side here, if it's going straight up, then that's going to be a 45-degree. I give it a little finger press, then I fold it back down again, and align that. And then what you're going to end up with is this little flap right here. See? So when I'm going to stitch, I'm going to keep it in that position to keep it out of the way. But right now, I need to know exactly where to drop my needle down for the starting of this next side. So I'm going to fold it over here and create a crease, and then just draw a little line right there. And I would be using a friction pen or some kind of marking system that would be able to come out. Now I'm going to put my piece back in the machine so that the 1/4-inch seam allowance is in the right place on my foot. I know where that is. Now I'm going to manipulate, I'm going to move the needle and the fabric until my needle is dropping straight down on the line at the place where it's a 1/4 inch away. And then I'm going to stitch straight down. And I'm going to continue to do that all the way around the quilt. I'll meet you back here for corner. Okay, so we've gone around the 4 corners, and I'm ready to start the 4th one. And then so I've got it in. I'm only going to go down a small way. I'm going to go down a short way. And what you want is to have about 10 inches distance between here and here, between where you started and where you end. And I want the end that I was just working with cut so it'll just fit within there. This is my starting edge. You can see there's my 45-degree angle. So the next thing you're going to do, we want to make this disappear, so we need to do a bias join. This is so cool, I can't even express to you how cool this is. Well, you'll know here in just a minute. First thing you want to do is open up the long edge that you just got done coming around the corner with. Okay? You want to open it up and make it flush, so the lower edge here, you've got the wrong side up. And you want this edge to be flush with the raw edge of the quilt. And then you're going to take this end that you started with and open it up, also wrong side up. And then where that little mark is, where the little beginning of the 45-degree angle on the bottom side here is, you want to mark that, just give it a little mark on your quilt. So you can see that I've marked it right there. This is where this one will end and this one will begin. But if you don't add a 1/2 inch seam allowance to it, you're not going to be happy. So we're going to add 2 1/4 inch seam allowances, one for each side, which will equal, I need to add a 1/2 inch to this, because I can't make this any longer. So I'm going to use my 1/2 inch on this side. So I'm going to take my ruler, the same one that I had before. It's got a 45-degree line on it right here. I'm going to line it up against the bottom of my quilt, and I'm going to put the 1/2 inch mark right on that little tick mark and draw a line straight up. Take out the pins, and this is my cutting line, and I'm just going to go for it. Hope it's right. I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to stitch these two together. You can see if you lay them down, they're going to stitch together nicely. I'm going to open them up, put them right sides together. Be sure that you allow that little dog ear on the side. And I'm going to pin it 3 times because this is a bias edge and I want it to be accurate. I want to make sure that it doesn't stretch as I'm stitching. Now on a full-size quilt you'd have a lot more room here than I have, so I've got to kind of bunch it up a little bit because this is a little tiny. But as the best of my ability, I am going to stitch from that little V on that edge where the dog ear is to the little V over here. I'm going to maintain my 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to go slowly because, again, it is a bias edge. Take your pins out as you go along. Do not stitch over your pins. Still, I'm aiming for this little V right there. Getting close to that pin, getting close to the V, and do your very best to come off at that point. Now you can see I've stitched from that point to this point across there, and I've made that bias thing. You would finger press this open. I'm not going to take the time to do that. Finger press this open. You don't even need to take it back to your machine. And then look what happens when you lay it down. It's just magical. I'm telling you, it's magical. It disappears. And all you have to do is just stitch from there to there, and you're done with it. Now the last thing is I believe that all quilts should have a little hand stitching. So I'm going to show you what I do. I have long hair in this, so I'm caught in there. I'm going to show you what I do to create that mitered corner. I love these little clip things, or the little hair clips that we wore when we were little kids that are now quilting magic. I have a pin in, and I'm using, you would use a coordinating thread with the binding, not the same thing as the backing. But I would bury my knot down in the seam allowance, and then begin taking tiny little stitches. You want to just catch it, and generally these are no more than 1/4 inch apart. You just want to take those tiny stitches. I'm going to work my way up to this corner. And when I get to the corner and into the seam allowance, I'm going to take a second stitch there just to kind of lock that binding in place. And I'm going to turn it this way, and I'm going to fold, make a miter, and fold that down, and look what you get. It's just so nice. I'm going to lock this in place, and because I would be using a coordinating thread, which I'm not right now, I'm using white against this yellow. I went and found the worst combination I could possibly find in my stash. And then you want to just continue stitching along, and you get this lovely miter in the front and this lovely miter in the back. I don't think I could have found a more humongous needle to work with. So then you get this lovely miter on the back, and look at the miter that you have on the front. It's just beautiful. So then your quilt would be done. Be sure you put a label on it, date it, write your name, who it's for, and why you made it. Because someday your great-grandkids are going to want to know why. That's it. Hope you enjoyed it.